I've been to a few of his talks but understood little of what he has said. I have been to a few of his talks but little of what he has said. So the underlined phrase is little of what he has said. What are the options? Little of what he said, a little of what he has said, little of what he has talked, no improvement. So what do you think is the answer? Do you think the underlined phrase as is correct or not? So it's either between 2 and 1. So we all know the difference between little and a little, right? What's the difference? Anybody? You should know this. I'm still getting options. A little is basic thing but no need of has. Guys, a little is positive in meaning, some. Little is negative in meaning, which means hardly, right? So I've been to a few of his talks but understood little of what he said means I hardly understood what he said. Okay, so in terms of little and a little, it's just to do with meaning, is a context referring to a positive or a negative meaning. So that doesn't really amount to, grammar or grammatical mistake as such. It really depends on what you're trying to convey in the context. But in the given context, we're talking, I have been to a few of his talks but understood little of what he said. We're still talking about the action of you having gone to his talks is the past, right? You're referring to something that has happened in the past. I have been meaning I've started going to this person's talks, some time back, and maybe you still continue to do so. But the act that you're talking about is in terms of what you understood or what you didn't understand, understood being your clue word, you need a simple past tense and you don't need again a present perfect tense. Okay? So that's why option 1 would be correct. Little of what he said and not option 2. Yeah, are you following? So just look at the context. I have been to a few of his talks, which means I may continue to go so because they've used the present perfect tense, which is absolutely fine. But understood, which means the action of you having listened to his talks and commenting on it is still in the past tense because that's an act that is done and over. So I need the simple past tense, which is available only in option 1. He said. Okay? You don't need the present perfect tense again, which both option 2 and 3 gives. Has talked, has said. Not needed. Right? Whenever you use the little, you're referring to something more specific. The little I know about Sagar is that makes me realize, that he's somebody who does a lot of research. Just to give you an example, which means I'm specifically talking about a particular situation or a particular person or a specific activity. The little I know about so and so, or the little I understand of what you're saying, right? You're being very specific. And we just saw the difference between a little and little. So depending on the context and what you're trying to communicate, you will use these 3 accordingly. In fact, this is one of the questions that was raised earlier in a doubt clarification session, and I've addressed this earlier as well. I welcome all the delegates on behalf of ABC Corporation. On behalf of is the underlined phrase, on the account of, on the parts of, for, no improvement. So this one, on behalf of, is absolutely fine as it is. You don't have to change anything, no improvement, yes. Most of you got this right. Any of these 2 options could be the correct answer. So, any of is the underlined phrase. What are the options? Either one of, any 2 of, either of. What do you think is the answer? You have a clue phrase obviously in the question, right? What can it be? The clue phrase is 2 options, na? So I can't say any of. So it definitely can't be option 2. Either this or that, right? So option 3 would be either of these 2 options could be the correct answer. Either one of is again being very, redundant. When you are saying either, it itself means what? Either this or that. Either this or either that. Right? Then again, why you want to say either one? So either of these 2 options could be the correct answer. Option 3 is the answer. Okay? Let's move on. Several ministers have been expected to meet the people tomorrow. Have been expected is the underlined phrase. What are my options? Have been expectant, have been expecting, are expected. And then I have no improvement. What can be the answer? This again is to do with simple tense. I want you to look at the context. Tell me what the context is talking about. Is it talking about a future arrangement? you have a clue word in the context, and then you select the appropriate tense from the given options. Let's see who gets this right. Do we have answers? Option 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. So why 3? Can somebody quickly tell me? Q? Why 3? Why can't it be anything else? Who's going to explain to me? Why have you chosen option 3? There should be a reason, no? What is the reason? It's a future event. Okay. Also understand, I would say instead of even saying future event, right? Remember there's a difference. Usually for future arrangements, you use the present continuous is used. But this is almost like a fixed event, hai na? Which is going to happen at a later time, which is when? Tomorrow, right? So remember, the simple several ministers are in terms of subject verb agreement. Obviously, that is also playing a role. More than one minister, that's fine, right? But keep in mind, it's just not the future tense which is used for future arrangements. Sometimes you will use the simple present tense, sometimes you will use a simple present continuous tense, or even the simple past tense to explain future arrangements. So you'll have to know these subtle changes as well. Yeah, so one such example is this. Can you think of other example sentences? Just think of example sentences. You know this, you've used this. Popular noun, several ministers. Okay. Yeah, anyway, several ministers are expected to meet the people tomorrow. So and so is expected to do something. When you use that construction itself, you're talking about some action that they are required or people are expecting them to take. We're talking about something that is a fact, right? When it is a fact, would you say are, or would you use the perfect tense, present perfect tense, where you're talking about an action that started sometime in the past and it is continuing up till now? Are expected to arrive to this function. Always arrive, any movement, the preposition that you will use is to. So this is agreed. We're going to move forward. Let's move to the next one. Rafiq introduced me to his friend who's both a scientist and a musician. Do you think? See, when you're talking about arriving, I will arrive. When you're talking about movement, you always say, but when you are stressing on the purpose, then you will use for, right? The purpose for this person arriving is for the function. That makes sense. The reason why he's coming is for the function. There, I'm using for because the importance of the stress is on the purpose of the function. Okay? But if you're talking about just the movement of or the transition of him arriving, right? When you're referring to movement, always stick to to. So depending on what you're stressing on, yeah, the prepositions will change. Anyway, most of you have come back and said to. See, the problem with option 2 is there's something missing. Can you identify it? Can somebody identify, if you're saying option 2, look at the option and tell me something is missing. What is that? So, the indefinite article is again missing before musician, right? So, though it sounds correct, that's the reason why it was not option 2, and the given context is correct as it is. Rafiq introduced me to his friend who is both a scientist and a musician. This is a statement. Okay, who as a relative pronoun is obviously correct, substituting the friend. So, Rafiq introduced me to his friend who is both a scientist and a musician. Okay, that's why it is no improvement. We definitely know option 1 and 3 is out. Okay, alright. So, this is very, very simple, but something that we overlook, right? Article errors are the only errors that most of us tend to overlook. It's an oversight. We miss it. That's what I'm saying. Rafiq introduced me to his friend who is scientist and musician together, right? It's just not happening. It's like saying, see, you need to understand that those are two different things that he does, right? It's not like when he's doing the scientific work, he's also playing the music. No, those are two different things, but those two are characteristics of his friend, right? So you can't say together. Okay,